Some people build impressive careers and still wake up with the quiet feeling that they've drifted away from themselves. Mitch Matthews has spent years helping people find their way back. Long before the podcast, the stage, and the coaching work, Mitch was the kid who talked his way into a bike shop job just to learn how business worked. He climbed fast, eventually helping lead sales training for a $2 billion pharmaceutical company, only to hit what looked like success from the outside and felt completely wrong on the inside. That tension became the turning point. He left certainty, stumbled through an early version of reinvention, learned the hard part most people skip, and built a new path from scratch. Today, Mitch is a keynote speaker, success coach, and the creator of the Dream, Think, Do podcast, now ranked in the top 1% globally. He's coached high-level leaders and entrepreneurs, interviewed world changers, and spoken to organizations like NASA, Nike, and United Airlines. His work sits at the intersection of ambition, identity, purpose, and performance, which is exactly why it resonates. What makes Mitch interesting is not just that he helps people dream bigger, it's that he understands the uncomfortable space between who you've become and who you still suspect you're meant to be. And before we start this episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth, and the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program. Here's Jane, a graduate who says, and I quote, "The Deep Wealth Mastery Program prevented me from making what would have been one of the biggest mistakes of my career. I almost signed on the dotted line with an unsolicited offer that I now realize would have shortchanged my hard work and my future had I accepted that offer. Deep Wealth Mastery has tilted the playing field to my advantage." Or how about Lynn? Wow, he gets right to the point, and I quote, "Deep Wealth Mastery is one of the best investments ever made because you'll get an ROI of 100 times that. Anyone who doesn't go through this will lose millions." And as you're listening to these testimonials, are you wondering if you have the time? Are you even thinking that you've got this covered? You have the advisors or people in your network? Well, I got to tell you, these myths, they're often behind the 90% failure rate for liquidity events. Think about it. You have one chance to get it right for your financial freedom. You really want to make it count. And when it comes to time, let's hear what William has to say. We just got in this testimonial. William says, and I quote, "I didn't have the time for Deep Wealth Mastery, but I made the time and I'm glad I did. What I learned goes far beyond any other executive program or coach I've experienced." So what do you think? As I hear that, that's exactly what gets me out of bed every day. That's my mission. That's the team's mission here at Deep Wealth, to literally change the social fabric of society, one business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. And my Deep Wealth Nation, what I want you to know, the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it isn't theory. It's from the trenches. It's the only one based on a 9-figure deal. And that deal, that was my deal. You know my story. I said no to a 7-figure offer. I created a system that later on, myself and my business partners, we said yes to a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure deal. That's what we now call the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, or the Scale for Ultimate Sales system. It's built by business owners for business owners. So if you're interested in growing your profits, for preparing for a future liquidity event, and that may be 2 years away, it could be 22 years away, whatever the time may be, you want to do this now, and you want to optimize your post-exit life. Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. To get started, email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, SUCCESS, at deepwealth.com. You'll receive all the information about the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, or better yet, why not hop on a complimentary strategy call? We'll go through exactly where your business is today and what's standing between you and your financial independence and your dreams. So that's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you. They're looking to grow their businesses, create market disruptions, and unlock their financial freedom to get what they deserve. And whether you've been in business for 3 years, 40 years, you're a startup, you're in manufacturing, you're in high tech, low tech, whatever the case may be, come on in and network with other business owners. It's a safe space. It's a confidential space with business owners, with businesses just like you, because they all want to lock in their financial freedom and enjoy both success and fulfillment. So again, the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step, please send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Deep Wealth Nation, welcome to another episode of the Deep Wealth Podcast. Well, Deep Wealth Nation, you heard the official introduction. We have a very special guest in the House of Deep Wealth. We have a fellow podcaster, but not just a podcast host, an incredibly successful podcast host. We have a coach of coaches, all about strategy, Mr. Success, and an incredible all-rounded individual. I know you have questions, Deep Wealth Nations. We're going to give you the answers, but let's put on hold for just a minute. Mitch, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. There's always a story behind the story. What's your story, Mitch? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
I love it. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. It's an honor and it's fun to be here with you. I just so appreciate it. Gosh, there's so many different ways we could go. But as I thought about you and the audience, I thought it might be helpful to know a little bit of that true story behind the story. So I'm an entrepreneur now. We have our own training organization where I do coaching, speaking, and then we've got online training as well. But really, that got started years ago when I was a teenager in a small town in Iowa in the Midwest. And I was kind of an extreme kid. So I was an extreme worrier. I was afraid of a lot of things, but I was also extremely curious. And in my early teen years, I got very curious about bicycles. And there was one place in my little town of Newton, Iowa for me to go, and that was Marty Schwinn's Cyclery, which was a bike shop in a hole-in-the-wall building 2 blocks off of our square. Our square was that Hallmark Christmas movie kind of square with a courthouse in the middle with shops all around it. And the bike shop was 2 blocks off of that. We were next to the Goodwill and the only strip club in town. So it was a great place to be when you were 12 and 13. But I basically, the summer of my 12th year, I rode my bike up to Marty Schwinn's Cyclery every day and just did whatever I could to try to help in any way so I wouldn't get arrested for loitering. I swept the alley. I painted trash cans. I mowed the owner's lawn without his permission, all those things. But by the end of that summer, I had earned my right to be there. And so they, instead of having me arrested for loitering, they hired me. And at 13, I got my first dream job, which I had no idea at the time. I thought it was all about bicycles, but within a few months, I still enjoyed bicycles, but then I realized I had a different passion, a bigger passion, a globe-changing passion, and that was entrepreneurship. And I just fell in love with entrepreneurship, how the bike shop ran, how we could sell more, how we could help people more, all those things. And that changed my trajectory. And so into college, I went working at the bike shop the whole time. I actually launched my own seminar company while I was in college and all of those things, but then went into business to business sales and then went into pharmaceutical sales, had a bunch of success, really shot through the ranks there. But my last few years in the pharmaceutical industry, I'm wildly blessed to say I got promoted into a bad fit job. And initially I thought, oh no, I could tell within days that it was a bad fit. It wasn't a bad job, but it was a bad fit for me. And I couldn't just quit. We were in a situation where I couldn't just quit. And so I just had to battle it out. But I'm grateful that bad fit job woke up that dream that got placed in me as a teenager. And that was entrepreneurship and having my own company and doing my own thing. And so I hatched basically the beginnings of our training company now on the side of that bad fit job and started to build our training company as I did that bad fit job day to day. And that was something that kept me alive. It's something that kept me on fire. And I thought it was going to be 5 years or so before the side hustle, that little training company, could replace my income in the pharmaceutical industry. But I'm wildly blessed to say that a lot of prayer, a lot of hard work, and some duct tape, we were able to leave that at about 5 months of having our own company. And we haven't looked back since, and that was 2002. Really, it's been a great run. I enjoy what we get to do, and we're growing each year, so I'm grateful for that.
Amen to that. And Mitch, it's amazing as you're talking about, and you used the word when I was researching for today, bad fit ceiling, when you're talking about that job. And looking back, I don't know about you, I know for myself, some of the darkest moments at the time, they felt like the darkest moments. When I look back, and of course, hindsight's always 2020, I can then connect the dots and say, wow,
exactly.
Didn't realize it at the time, but thank goodness this happened, because if not 100%. For that, I wouldn't be there. Thoughts about that?
I couldn't agree more. And it's truly one of those I mentioned, my faith is wildly important to me. And that's something that's helped me to get perspective on seasons like that, because I do think life, we live in seasons, and some of those seasons we feel like we're thriving. Some of those seasons feel like bad fit jobs, all of those things. But to realize that if we're focused on the right things, if we get curious, if we're really trying to grow, I truly believe that even the worst case scenarios, those bad seasons, can work for us in the long run. Like you said, with a little retrospect, oftentimes with a little bit of time, it's, oh, that's obvious. Like I knew, especially early on, that I wasn't supposed to spend the rest of my days in the pharmaceutical world. It was a great fit when I got in. I had a lot of success, but that's not where I was supposed to live the rest of my days. That's not where I was supposed to have the most impact. And I think if I hadn't gotten that bad fit job, I might have been there 10 years, maybe even 20 years longer than I should have. And so that bad fit job woke me up to say, hey, wait, what am I supposed to be doing? And I'm wildly grateful for what it was. Painful. It was hard. And honestly, my wife was very concerned for a season. Like, oh boy, that spark in you is going out. That's why I had to experiment. That's why I had to try new things. And that's led us eventually to me starting our own company and building that thing on the side.
Mitch, I absolutely love that, because as you're talking about that, you're actually taking back to the first and only job. I don't even say the word, the first job I ever had. I was in my MBA program and I was doing an internship in the summer.
Yeah.
And not going to name names. I was at one of the big cellular companies, and I would have fired myself on day one. And
Right.
like yourself, I couldn't quit because it was the reputation of my program and all those
Yeah.
who came before and after. So I had to stick that through. But wow, did that give me some perspective? But let me ask you this. You're in big pharma,
Yep.
which is a gazillion-dollar industry. And although
Right.
it wasn't for you, looking back now, were there some takeaways, some strategies that you took from big pharma that you've been able to employ and strategize with your own companies and your
Massive.
programs?
Absolutely massive. It's funny because I reflect back on my time in the bike shop and I still lean on things that I learned in that hole in the wall building daily, but from big pharma as well. It's one of those that I think we can all agree that big pharma has done some amazing things. They've also done some questionable things as well. But the companies, I'm wildly blessed to say, the companies that I work for were upstanding companies. One of those was a high growth, very entrepreneurial company and no longer exists. It was a partnership between two big behemoth companies, and they made this smaller company as a joint partnership. We got it to $2 billion. I helped to run the training department. It was a very exciting time. And I had time in the field and I really enjoyed that. I actually, I got into the industry. My wife and I were living in Montana at the time. And I got into the industry as a sales rep in what I called the northern half of the Louisiana Purchase. My sales territory was 2/3 of Montana, half of Wyoming, and a chunk of Idaho. So I got paid really well to drive around God's country and sell drugs out of the trunk of my car, right? All of it legal, all of it amazing. And then I got promoted into that training department. We were able to do some things nobody thought we could do. And it was incredible. But at the same time, we were also navigating a lot of growth, which you well know is exciting, but it can be wildly scary. It can be incredibly exhausting, all of those things. And I went from managing myself to all of a sudden helping to manage a significant training department that was working basically 24/7 to try to keep ahead of everything from drug launches to ethics training to all sorts of things. And that was really my first opportunity to see team dynamics and what does it take to not only motivate a group of people, but to motivate a group of high achievers. This training department it was well known. We'd won awards for innovation and performance and all those things, and really had extracted the best of the best from the sales fields. So it was one thing to lead a team, but it was another thing entirely to lead a team of rock stars and to push them beyond what they thought possible. And so I look back on that every day to now when I'm coaching and working with executives and leaders, I'm able to draw on those experiences time and time again. And I'm so grateful for it.
Absolutely. And as you're talking about that, what you're bringing up for me is firstly, people will use wrongly, in my opinion, anyways, management and leadership interchangeably. They're really not.
Right. Nah.
Leading is not managing and vice versa. And then on the same side of things, I know, and probably some people in Default Nation are like this as well. And I suggest let's have an open mind and think otherwise. Hey, I'm employing somebody, I'm signing the check. They're going to have to respect me because I say so. I'm the boss. And if they don't like that, there's a door. And there's earning respect, which is, I believe, we all need to be in servant leadership. You and I were talking about that offline.
Yeah.
So, how did you, with these rock stars, what did you do? What strategies, what insights, what tips did you deploy that they're respecting you not because they have to, but because they want to? They chose to respect you.
Well, Jeffrey, it was definitely one of those experiences where now I train on this, but at the time, it wasn't training. It was experiences, life experiences, right? And I was kind of getting to see the best and the worst play out in front of me, case study after case study. And what's interesting is, like you, I won't name names, but I was hired by a leader, but then that leader was replaced by a manager. And I probably wouldn't have been able to put my finger on it at the time, but you could feel this notable shift when I was brought in. I was brought in by a leader who trusted us, who led from the back, not the front. She was somebody that was inspiring. She saw us, she held us as capable and would draw out our talent, would draw out our heart. We always knew the why, but we were often freed up to figure out the how. She was replaced by a manager who took the exact opposite approach. He did not hold us as capable. He would demand things, would not talk a lot about the why, but demand the how. And you could see these people just start to shrink. And so what I tried to do in my role was to bring back those leadership qualities because, hey, we all know, especially as leaders, there are times where people need to be instructed on the how. I always say, if you're in a building that's on fire, the next steps should be clear. But boy, when you hire the best of the best, if you're not giving them the chance to really own things, if you're not showing them that you are holding them as capable, they will shrink. And more importantly, they will leave. But when we started to then introduce those leadership strategies back in to be able to say, hey, here's the why of this project. What's the how? Tell us, what do you think? What would be the best way to do this? How can we experiment to find the best way? And we would do that together. And it's interesting because we kind of had to navigate both worlds. The manager really tried to apply pressure. And what we tried to do on our level of leadership was just to create those pockets where we could be in a laboratory, where people could experiment, where people could really figure out the how. And again, under that, it was an interesting place to be. But what we did was we saw greatness reemerge. We saw engagement reemerge. We saw loyalty reemerge. We saw great decision-making reemerge. And it was amazing to just get to be a part of that because you could see it all play out in real time.
It's amazing what it can do to the culture, and it works both ways. It can go either side of that. When you get that excitement, that curiosity, that engagement, people are investing in themselves and in the company. Amazing things happen. That's where the magic begins to happen. So let me ask you this. When you look back, and it could be any period of time, when you look back at the version of you, and you had perhaps the title or that station in life, you had the zeros in the bank to show that.
Right.
And on paper, everything looks perfect. When you go back to one of those moments, and perhaps there's a few, if you go back to one of those, what were you refusing to admit to yourself back in the day at that time? Anything come to mind?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think this is wildly important because I coach people as a success coach, executive coach, and I'm kind of like you, I'm expensive, right? So I only tend to get to work with the best of the best. And what's interesting about this is that I think success, I talk about this all the time with my clients. Success is fantastic, but it can also be incredibly dangerous because what I was realizing, especially in those latter years and specifically in that bad fit job, what I had done was I started to move from really striving to win accidentally, unintentionally. I moved into just trying not to lose.
Yeah.
and just trying to keep things together. And that was at work, but also in life. It's a little bit of, I went from being an innovator, willing to risk things, try new things, learn new things, to then in that bad fit season, really to not lose, to just try to keep things together. At work, it was, hey, let's just try not to break anything. Instead of experimenting, I was just trying to make sure there weren't any fires and to manage crisis. And at home, it was a little bit of, I started to really focus on all that I could lose by walking away from that bad fit job. And that's a really dangerous place to be. And what's interesting about that is I think a lot of people, especially that haven't achieved a lot of high level success, I think a lot of people assume that there's a line. And once you're past that line, you don't worry about those things anymore. But as you well know, oftentimes as you win big, the risks feel bigger as well, what you could potentially lose. And I know for me, what I had to do, and that part of me, that kind of that inner spark had to reignite to be able to say, hey, listen, I got to shift from just trying not to lose to move back in to say, what do I want to create? Where can I learn? What do I want to grow? And to be able to say, hey, this is valuable enough to take some risks to be able to do that next thing that I feel called to do. And I totally agree with you that I would love to say all of that was at a conscious level, but probably 6 months of it was at a subconscious level where I just felt like I was walking in tension, but I couldn't put my finger on it exactly.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And when I'm asking that question, I'm actually thinking of those in Deep Wealth Nation, because here in Deep Wealth, in our 9-step roadmap and our Deep Wealth Mastery program, one of the things that we continually go back to, and it's really hard to imagine, but so true, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, the seeds of failure are contained in our greatest success. And so when you think about that, tomorrow's failure is from today's success. It seems unimaginable, yet it's there. And it happens time and time again. And actually, we do case studies in the Deep Wealth Mastery program that go through that. Looking back, and again, hindsight's always 20/20, were there telltale signs that you simply missed at the time? And I'm asking this because, again, I'm thinking of those in Deep Wealth Nation who they may be there right now, they just don't realize it. And through hearing from your experience, my experience, oh my goodness, wow, that sounds exactly what I'm going through. Thank you so much, Mitch, for illuminating me with that. And I also know this ties directly into your authority bridge. So looking back, were there some signs that you simply missed that you can share with us as, hey, you're seeing this or feeling that? Perhaps.
Absolutely. Well, I know for me, when I moved into that bad fit job, it was one of those things where it was a different market. It was a different just approach, all of those things. There was a lot of new in my life, and new is not bad, but a very dangerous thing can happen when you're navigating new is you can move into a time where you start to forget your brilliance. And that might sound somewhat pompous, but it's one of those things where because I was surrounded by new team, new organization, new leadership, all of those things, all of a sudden I was really tempted to shrink. I was really tempted to dismiss what I knew because it didn't feel like an immediate fit. Every place I turned, it felt unfamiliar. And now I try to inject some of that into my life monthly by trying new things monthly in a little contained experiments, right? But in that season, I was surrounded by new, surrounded by unfamiliar, and I downgraded my experience. I downgraded my brilliance because it was familiar to me, even though it's one of those things that it didn't necessarily feel like an immediate exact right fit. And what's interesting about this now, I look at it and I see it all the time. We have a program, you mentioned it with Authority Bridge, and one of the things we do, and I've been a coach and a speaker since 2002. People started to approach me in 2006 saying, hey, it looks like your business is actually working. Show us what you're doing. How do you do this? And all those things. So we've been training up other coaches and speakers since that time. And we have online programs and live events and all of this. And we've been able to help thousands of coaches. But in the last few years, it's been specifically focused on executive entrepreneurs, founders that want to inject coaching and speaking into their business, into their daily life, not as a replacement, but as something that they can do in addition to generate more income. But for a lot of folks, it's more to generate more impact and to really focus on their legacy. And what's interesting with that is a lot of folks that try to do that, they try to coach, they try to speak, they try to do some consulting on the side, and so much of it feels new. And because of that, people will often shrink away from that. They'll say, oh, that wasn't for me, or I didn't land that client, or I wasn't quite sure how to sell X or Y, some more speaking or more coaching or consulting. And so they just stop doing it because it feels unfamiliar, because they don't have systems and sequences. And one of the things we do is we introduce systems. I know you're a huge systems guy, so you'll appreciate this, but we introduce systems to this, but we also remind people of their brilliance, because I think much like a fish is unaware of the water it's swimming in, we're often unaware, or we at least downgrade the brilliance that surrounds us, right? Those things that we do just as a natural part of being successful, because they're familiar with us, we tend to downgrade those things. So when we're helping people build businesses on the side, or sometimes it's after they've done an exit or after they've retired, they decide to do some coaching or speaking. We do both, where we introduce systems and sequences so that can actually start to feel familiar. But we also say, hey, let's inventory your brilliance. Let's create a story vault. Let's create a systems and strategy vault for you. And we help them recognize the brilliance that they've been swimming in, often for years, that helps them to boost not only their understanding of how this can work, but also their appreciation for what got them there.
Absolutely. And as you're talking about that and what you're doing, particularly for those that have gone through an exit, as we call them, the post-exit entrepreneurs, with your authority bridge of finding that meaning, that purpose, Mitch, I can take you back to immediately after my exit, which on paper, you can check all the boxes. Jeffrey's been there, done that. Yet, it was one of the darkest seasons of my life. I didn't have the purpose. I had too much time on my hands. It's something called a non-compete, and I didn't prepare for that. I had too many zeros in the bank. Very dangerous combination. And back then, I had lost my way with my spirituality, with God, who was not in my life at that time. It was a dark season for me, so I can completely relate to what you're sharing with that. And Deep Wealth Nation, in case you're wondering, this is coming from the trenches with what Mitch is sharing. And you may not have heard of the organizations that Mitch has spoken with. Organizations like, I don't know, NASA or Nike or United Airlines, small companies. You may have to look them up if you haven't heard of them. But he's out there from the trenches sharing what works. And as an entrepreneur, particularly if you're a post-exit entrepreneur or you're going to be having an exit, wow, Mitch, what I could have done with a program like yours before my exit, had I gone through Authority Bridge, I suspect that a lot of the biggest mistakes that I made just would not have happened. And so let me ask you this. And Deep Wealth Nation, I want you to keep an open mind as I ask this next question, because if you don't subscribe to what I'm about to ask, don't hang up, stay on the line, stay there with us, be open to it. I call it God. Other people call it, perhaps it's the field or the quantum universe or the creator, whatever it is. For me, it's God. How has God played a role in your life and made a difference for you as you look back from where you are now back through your journey?
Oh, I love this, Jeffrey. I'm excited to be able to go here. And I'm with you. It's one of those things that I'm a follower of Jesus. I believe in God. I love the Bible. I love prayer and scripture. But we talk about this on my podcast, Dream Think Do, all the time. And that, hey, you don't have to agree with me. Let's just be curious. Let's just talk about this, because I love finding out about what people believe and why they believe it. And I know for me, prayer plays a huge part of my daily life, in my relationships, in my marriage, in our family, but it also plays a huge part in my business. I've made major decisions based on prayer that made no logical sense. I'll tell you a quick story. I was speaking, doing a bunch of speaking, and honestly getting a little burnout. And it was in 2019. I got this nudge that I had a speaking gig in Oregon, and I got this nudge that I should just stick around and spend a little time in the mountains afterwards. And so I did that. I did the speaking gig on a Tuesday night. I'll never forget. Everybody thought I went to the airport. I actually went back to my Airbnb and then just went to the mountains for a couple of days after that. And while I was in the mountains, I got this huge download, and I believe it was from God, basically saying, hey, stop selling speaking today and start focusing on online training. It made no sense at all. But I've learned when I get nudges like that, I should pay attention to them. I called my wife when I got down from the mountains, and she's, hey, let's lean into it. Let's go. But also, one of the other things, and I do believe that God is huge and God loves us and God wants to speak to us. And if God can create universes, he's probably got some answers to the questions that we have. So why not talk to him about it? And I believe he wants to be specific. So not only did I get that download, but we had one team member that all she did was my scheduling for my speaking. And so my immediate response to the download of Stop Selling Speaking Today, Start Focusing on Online Training was, what do we do about this employee? Like, that's her job. And he's like, she wants to talk to you about something. Ask her about it. So I got down out of the mountains, called my wife, and then I called this employee. And she's like, hey, did you get some stuff? Because she knew I was going to the mountains to pray. And I said, I did, but I got that I was supposed to ask you about something you're wanting to tell me about. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. She's like, yeah, well, okay. I've been thinking about doing what I do for you, but doing it for other speakers. What would you think about me going to halftime or quarter time? And I'll do what I do for you, but I'll launch my own business and help other speakers to do that. I'm like, oh my gosh. She's like, I've been so nervous to tell you. Is that okay? And I'm like, well, just wait till you hear what I got while I was in the mountains, right? And so that night, I helped her create a website. She launched her own business. She went to about one quarter time for us, all those things. And we stopped selling speaking. Now, fast forward, we didn't know that we were on a brink of a global pandemic, but we had sold a bunch of speaking up to that point, but we stopped selling that day. Well, the last speaking gig that we had sold was the last day before COVID shut everything down. In fact, I was driving home from that event and the organizer called me. This is 6-7 months later. She's like, I'm so grateful we didn't have our event today because we wouldn't have been able to do it. You know, the whole organization has shut down, sent everybody home. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And basically God had given us 6-7 months to completely kind of rearrange and refocus our business to online training. I didn't know why, but it wound up being that during a global pandemic, we had been set up for incredible success, which I'm wildly grateful for. So I'm careful to tell that story because I know some people are like, well, why didn't God tell me about it? You know, and I know for me, there's been lots of times where I've heard stories, something like this and go, why didn't God tell me? And then I realized like, wait, did I really slow down and listen? Was I praying during that time? And it's amazing the more time that I take to pray. And it doesn't necessarily mean having 2 days in the mountains every time. I prayed a lot this morning as I walked my dog. I prayed for 15 minutes before I hopped on this call with you. So prayer is an integral part of our business. And it's where I can tap into and connect with a God that I believe loves us all, but also sometimes get some really specific answers that have helped me dramatically.
And again, Deep Health Nation, you may be hearing this and, oh my goodness, what have I turned into? Not about this at all. And that's okay. We respect that. Hey, have your own opinion and at least be open to this. And I want to take what we're talking about now and actually go back and circle back something to Mitch that you were saying. And we talk a lot about this in the Deep Health Mastery program, whether it's Deep Health Mastery Growth, if you want to grow your profits, no plans to sell, or Deep Health Mastery Exit. Hey, I want to grow my profits and exit in the near future. In step 2, X factors. And an X factor is unique to a company. It's something that you're world class in that is very difficult to copy or replicate. It could be your culture. It could be your leadership team. And one of the things that we talk about specifically for actually both the culture and the leadership team, Mitch, is to what you're saying, is experimentation. Let me be open to experimentation, even the words that we use. So if I said, Mitch, we're going to do a bet the farm decision here. We're going to take this project on. We're going to do it. Or if I came to you and said, hey, Mitch, let's try an experiment. Let's see if this is going to work. We'll take, I don't know, a week or two. And if it doesn't work, we can always change. Or I'll use a word from the pandemic. We can pivot, do something different, completely different reaction. Why don't you experiment, Deep Health Nation, to what Mitch is saying and try different things? And when it comes to whether it be God or that inner voice, why not go deep within and ask the question? Mitch, I'll never forget, I was at this conference. It was for Christian men, and one of the speakers, incredibly successful developer, got up there, and you would recognize the name. He's in the headlines and everything else. We'll keep that offline. But what he said was, before I started going within, the first thing when I woke up, I would be, okay, dear God, please bless this shopping center that I'm building, that it may prosper and succeed. And he says, now I'm at the point of, God, where do you want me to be? Should I be
Yeah.
building this shopping center
Yeah.
at all? Or should it be somewhere else? And same thing with you, Deep Wealth Nation. Go within and not ask necessarily for, hey, what I'm doing right now, let it go on and prosper. Should I be doing this right now? What should I be doing right now? And Deep Wealth Nation, you may be surprised. Try an experiment for 15 days, 30 days, see where you land on that. So that said, Mitch, let me ask you this. I'm coming to you now and you're going to walk me through the authority bridge. Yeah, Mitch, I heard you on the Deep Wealth podcast. You talked about this authority bridge and with purpose and me to create a legacy and make a difference out there. What's the secret sauce? What am I expecting? How long is it taking? What am I going through? Very high level.
Yeah.
What would you want me to know about authority bridge?
I love it. Well, one of the things that's interesting about it is that we start the process with a visioning approach. And it shocks people because we tend to attract people that have been very successful, people who have achieved, people who have, like you were saying, checked all the boxes. But what I do is we start off with a process that helps them to get more clarity on the life they actually want to create. Because I'm very effective at helping people build businesses that are profitable, especially when it comes to coaching and speaking and consulting. But I tell people all the time, I never want to help you create a business you don't love in 5 years. And you've seen this all the time with some of the people that exit, don't want to exit because they love what they do. But a lot of people exit because they are done. They have created something they don't want to be a part of anymore. And that, to me, it's one of those where I want to help them create a vision that also then functions as a target to say, okay, this is the kind of life that we want to live. These are the kinds of people we want to impact. And that might feel touchy-feely, but it is incredibly strategic. And it also helps people remember that oftentimes they've achieved success either through growing an organization or building an organization. Sometimes they've navigated industries and faced all sorts of challenges where they didn't have a lot of control. And one of the things that I always say is, hey, this training organization that you're going to build is your own, and you get to decide what does it create in your life, but also who does it impact? What's the fingerprint of this organization? So we start with that, and it winds up being an incredibly encouraging, but also incredibly strategic process. Then we start to inventory that brilliance that we talked about to be able to say, hey, what are some of your personal operating systems? What are those things that make you a great leader? What are some of those things that make you a great entrepreneur? To be able to inventory those and to be able to function from those. And then what we're able to do is put those into frameworks that then people are able to offer coaching, speaking, and or consulting on those things that are signature, their ideas, but also something that they're proud of, something they're excited about, something that creates ripple effect. As we do that too, though, we also shore up the foundation of their business. And I'm sure you've built homes. You know that the foundation is wildly important. But when your home is done and you invite your friends over to see it, they're not kicking in the door and running down to the basement to look at the foundation walls, right? The basement walls. But we know it's wildly important. So that's also a part of the Authority Bridge process, especially the initial aspects of it, as we build a solid foundation for a coaching, training, and consulting business with systems that are duplicatable, that allow you to grow a business without it feeling like you're starting from scratch, without needing to burn down everything you've done, but it allows you to just move forward in a smooth and confident way. So it's a really powerful process that people actually walk away with their head a little higher, their shoulders back. They're able to inventory their successes, but they're also able to immediately see the impact that they're going to have. And it has an impact on their legacy as well. So it's a really inspiring and encouraging process that also often very much leads to, and for a lot of people, it's an extra six figures revenue, but it also really allows them to feel like, this is the kind of impact I want to have in this season.
And Deep Wealth Nation, you heard that straight from the source, from the man himself who put this program together. Deep Wealth Nation, what I also want you to think about, because here at Deep Wealth, our saying is success without fulfillment is failure. Let me say it again. Success without fulfillment is failure. So I don't care how many zeros you have in the bank. how many accolades you have, how many successes you have. If you're not fulfilled, something is missing, something is not right. And so Deep Wealth Nation, as we're talking about this and what Mitch is actually doing in terms of walking you through this program, you may be thinking, well, Jeffrey, I don't have the time for that, or I don't really want a coaching business. But let me ask you this. If you had a way that you can give back, it could be to the team members in your company, or to family members, or to friends, or who knows, even strangers. I got to tell you this, don't do it for the money, do it for yourself. Go through this, the fulfillment that you'll get from this, because I know from my own experience, oftentimes the giver gets more than the receiver. It sounds like it shouldn't be, but it is. That's just the way that it is. It's amazing how that works. The giver gets more than the receiver. So Deep Wealth Nation, think about that. And as we're thinking about that, Mitch, let me ask you this, because again, you have this incredible podcast, Dream, Think, Do, and you're talking with your different guests about dreaming bigger. And I don't care if you're a founder, a business owner, an entrepreneur, if you're a team member, we're people, we're humans, and we're all cut more or less from the same cloth. Is there a common pattern of people not dreaming bigger? Are you seeing some things? Yeah, Jeffrey, you know what? 80% of the time, people aren't dreaming bigger because it's the same 20% of the same reasons that I'm hearing again and again. It's a good old Pareto's law, the 80-20 rule, or maybe it's 95-5. Yeah, Jeffrey, 5% of these reasons are why 95% of the people I speak with aren't dreaming bigger. What would you share with us on that?
That's great. I love it. Well, it's interesting. I recently had a neuroscientist on Dream, Think, Do named Anne-Laure Lecouffre. She's from France and just a brilliant neuroscientist who used to work for Google. And she defines something that I think applies to so many wildly successful people. And it gets to why a lot of people don't dream, but also why they need to be dreaming. And Anne-Laure talked about it, that she experienced something at Google that actually led her to quit. She had a highly successful position there, and she wound up quitting because of what she thought was burnout. But as she leaned back into research and studied the experience that she had, she realized that what she was experiencing was not burnout. It's what she now defines as being bored out. And what's interesting about burnout versus bored out is the symptoms are very similar, but the solution is vastly different. Oftentimes and I'm sure many of your listeners have experienced burnout, like, you start to experience fatigue, you start to experience lack of motivation, it's difficult to sleep, all of those things. Well, being bored out is a somewhat similar experience. You start to lose your passion, you start to lose your engagement, you start to become frustrated more easily. Well, the fire starts to go out, like we talked about earlier. But what's interesting about being bored out is it tends to happen more to highly successful people. In order to be highly successful, as you well know, oftentimes you have to establish systems, and you need to do those systems over and over again. And what's interesting about being bored out is what often happens is it happens to people that have those systems, those processes in place that they do over and over. It's what makes them successful, but they start to systematically and slowly start to become bored. They start to lose that fire. Even though it's the very thing that's made them successful, it's now the very thing that's leading to that dissatisfaction. And what's interesting, and Anne-Laure spoke to this, is she said the beautiful thing is that the solution for being bored out, I'm guessing some of your folks know exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe it's been misdiagnosed for them. I think it was burnout, but actually it might be bored out. Anne-Laure talks about the solution is actually variety, an injection of novelty. It's not burning everything down and moving to Fiji. It's not taking a month off and waiting for that sabbatical for a huge change. It's small experiments, like we were talking about, of trying new things. And how this applies, I think, to dreaming is, I think sometimes when we say, oh, what are my big dreams? Highly successful people, it's difficult for almost everybody when somebody says, hey, what's your big dream? It's like, I don't know what my big dreams are. I don't even know if I have dreams. I have goals and I achieve those all the time. But what's beautiful about what Anne-Laure is talking about is just a small injection of novelty can help to reignite that fire. And somebody else that I interviewed for Dream, Think, Do helped to kind of personify this, a guy named Sean Askinosie. And Sean was a wildly successful trial attorney in Missouri, like unbeatable trial attorney. And what's interesting about Sean is he realized that his fire was starting to go out. And nobody else knew it. He wasn't losing in court, but he just knew it was harder to drum up that passion. It was harder to work as hard as he had been working, all those things. And what's interesting is that Sean, although he didn't know about this research at the time, but he started to apply this idea of novelty. Sean said, hey, I'm not going to burn my career down, but I'm going to try some new things. And for Sean, that started with a night cooking class. He just took a cooking class at a local community college. And what's funny about this, Jeffrey, you'll appreciate this, is he figured out very quickly he sucked at cooking. Like he wasn't good. But one particular night of this night cooking class, they did chocolate. And he did well. And he actually was like, hey, I love chocolate. And so he took another class on chocolate making and all those things. And what's interesting is he kept experimenting. He didn't quit his job. He didn't walk away from the courtroom, but he started to get more intentional with diving into how do you make chocolate? How do you make good chocolate? How does it work? And then he started to get into how does the industry work? And how does this work? And how do you source and all those things? And he and his daughter took a trip and went and met with some growers and started to realize that industry's kind of messed up. There's a lot of injustice in that industry. And so he just kept experimenting. And now he has Askinosie chocolate. And what's interesting about Askinosie chocolate is it's small batch gourmet chocolate, and they have an open books approach. So he actually opens his books to the growers that they work with. They get to see his profit margins. He gets to see theirs. They all win. Oprah has now defined it as one of her favorite small batch chocolates in the world, all this stuff. Now, what's beautiful about Sean is that it's a great example of somebody who just did little experiments to reignite that passion, to beat the bored out. And for him, that led to a whole new dream. But the reason why I bring it up is to pursue something new, to inject a little novelty. Doesn't necessarily mean that someday you need to launch a chocolate company, but someday you might do something like that, but you only find out by doing those little experiments. And what's beautiful about with Sean is, he loves his life now. It wasn't an overnight thing. It was about a 10-year process to go from being an unbeatable trial attorney to now having unbeatable chocolate. But it's been exactly what he needed in this season of his life. And you can see that fire. And what's beautiful about that fire is he's still part of why he was so good in the courtroom, high value for justice. Part of why his company is so successful, high value for justice. And what's amazing about that is he was just able to apply that fire to different things, and it's made all the difference. It started, though, with giving himself that permission to just say, hey, I don't need to have a dream that lights the world on fire. I'm going to try some things out to inject a little novelty and find something new.
And Deep Health Nation, as you're hearing Mitch talk about from the trenches, I couldn't agree more with you, Mitch. And Deep Health Nation, I want you to think about this. Maybe you are planning a liquidity event or an exit where you'll have an investor or a buyer who will take over and you'll move on to the next chapter. Or maybe you don't plan to do that. You're going to be having the next generation come along. Whatever the case may be, there is going to be a chapter where you're not going to be doing what you're doing. And so the question becomes, what's it going to be? Because if you do nothing, if you do the typical retirement, well, the stats aren't great. It's most people have the final exit. It's the one that nobody wants, yet all of us have. And right. We can bring that on sooner than it should happen. Why not try that experiment? And whether it's working with Mitch and going through the program and going with Authority Bridge and seeing what's there, you're doing these trial balloons early on to see what's happening. And Mitch, I'll share with you, when we're going through Deep Wealth Mastery, as crazy as it sounds, we deliberately build in breaks into the program. And it's not just a break from Deep Wealth Mastery. We're having the founder who's going through saying, okay, Jeffrey, we're now I'm making this up, we're now in day 10 of this particular module. It's a 12-day module. Take the next 2 days off. And by the way, while you're at it, don't show up for your business. And we get a lot of pushback in the beginning. What do you mean? I can't show up for the business. It's going to fall apart. And we actually give a list of activities that you can do. Maybe go get a massage or do a staycation at home or do something that you've always talked about doing in your city that you've never had the time to do, or have a quick getaway. The brave souls who do it, two things happen. Number one, it becomes a ritual for them. And now they build this into the schedule throughout the year. And then number two, when they do show up for the business, they're more engaged. They're re-energized. They are excited. They're seeing the business through a different lens, because when we do the same old all the time, it's like driving your car. If you don't stop to fill up for gas, if you don't stop to change the oil, the car is going to break down. Well, why would it be any different for ourselves, for our business? And so I love what you're saying there. And Mitch, let me ask you this then. Is there a question, an important question that we haven't yet covered?
I love it. It's one of those things to be able to say, and I so appreciate your podcast and your audience, because these are people that are making an impact. They are growing businesses that are changing their industry, changing the world, all of those things. But it's that thing of, what if we gave ourselves permission to say, hey, in this next season, what do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? What's that thing? That not necessarily the next thing that makes just sense for your business, but to be able to say, in this next season, what's something I want to experience more of? What's something I want to do more of? Not because you have to, but because you want to, or you feel called to. And it's a really interesting question that helps to guide people to say, hey, wait, what do I want to experience? What do I want to do? It's not just about achievement, to be able to say, all right, what do I want to experience more? And for some folks, it's, you know what? I want to have more relationships, or I want to have deeper impact, or I want to have more connection, whatever those things might be. But I know you're all about systems and all about intentionality. And I love good questions that help people move in that direction as well. So it's that thing of, hey, what's in this next season? What's something you want to do more of? Or what's something you want to experience more of? And that's made a huge difference for those that are brave enough to ask it.
Deep Wealth Nation, with what Mitch is sharing with us, with those questions, as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, you have the answers, Deep Wealth Nation. You just don't know the questions to ask. And that's what I love, not just about the podcast, but Mitch, what you're doing in terms of, hey, you're asking the questions that we don't know to ask, because when we go within, we have the answers. And when I'm going through the authority bridge and what you're doing, and you're walking me through a done for you system, I come out the other side a whole lot better. So that said, it's a great segue as we go into wrap-up mode. It's a tradition here on the Deep Wealth Podcast. It's my privilege, my honor. Every guest is asked the same question. It's a fun question. Let me set this up for you. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, Mitch, you have that magical DeLorean car that will take you to any point in time. So I want you to imagine now, this is the fun part. You look outside your window tomorrow morning. Not only is the DeLorean car curbside, the door is open, it's waiting for you to hop on in. What you do, you're now going to go back to any point in your life. Mitch, as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time it would be. Mitch, what are you telling your younger self in terms of life lessons or life wisdom? Or, hey, Mitch, do this, but don't do that. What would it sound like?
Oh, it's so great. I imagine Doc is there, excited, right? 10,000 gigawatts. I love it. I think for me, and I mentioned it briefly earlier, I grew up an extreme kid, and in many ways that was good, and in some ways that was bad. I was afraid of a lot of things. I had a lot of anxiety, and because of that, I had a lot of health issues and things like that. And I think if I had the chance to go back to tell my younger self a couple of things: one, it's all going to work out, and two, stay curious, embrace that curiosity. Because I think what's interesting for kids, and probably for all of us, is sometimes that the things that make us different are the things we feel like we need to downplay, the things that we might even be tempted to be embarrassed about. But I was enthusiastically curious, and that made me a little weird and sometimes a little embarrassed because of it. I was told to settle down a lot when I was a kid. Jeffrey, I have a feeling maybe you were similar. But at the same time, as I embraced that curiosity, that's the very thing that's taken me to have some of the most amazing experiences in my life. When I was in high school, I fell in love with American history. Not that our history is perfect. It's just fascinating. It was fascinating to me. And at one particular point, we were studying the American Revolution, and I got struck with the thought, I wonder how they teach this in England.
Yeah.
And so I started to look around, like, how could I go learn American history in England? What would that be like? And I found a program that allowed me to do that. So I went and lived in England for a year. And part of what I did was study American history from a British professor who, as it turns out, was an anti-American Marxist. So that was an entirely different take on American history. And what's amazing is she was just as passionate and felt just as right as I did. And it taught me a lot. But I think if I went back to that young Mitch, I would say, hey, don't hide it. Don't try to cover that up. Be curious, stay curious. It will take you to amazing places.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Putting the anti-American Marxists aside, and unfortunately, we seem to have too much of that today, but this is not a political podcast. So
exactly. We won't go there. Yeah.
But I love that. Stay curious. It's all going to work out. It's such great advice. And my other takeaway, what you're sharing with us, Mitch, is all of us, my own personal belief, all of us, and I'm choosing my words deliberately, we have God-given gifts.
Yes.
We don't know what they are when we're born. And it's not just our duty, it's our mission to find those God-given gifts and take it to the world. And as my family will tell you, weird is my middle name, at least as they tell me, with all the things that I do. But that's just my DNA and how I am and how I view and interact with the world. But stay curious. It's all going to work out. Absolutely love that. Mitch, someone in Deep Wealth Nation, they've heard this podcast. They want to speak with you. They have a question. They want to go through your coaching program and be with the elite of the elite. They want to go through the authority bridge. Where would be the best place online to reach you?
Absolutely. The best place to start is mitchmatthews.com. That's where people can go and find out. We've got a lot of free resources. It's also where you can find out more about Dream, Think, Do. But one thing we did for your people specifically is we have a training program called Finding Time for Your Next Chapter. And it's specifically for highly talented people like yourselves and like your listeners that are maybe navigating into a next season or wanting to create that next season. And maybe it's folks especially that are attracted to that idea of having the authority bridge, the Making Time for Your Next Chapter. It's a $97 course, but we've made it free. So people can go to mitchmatthews.com/time. It's a $97 course, but if they use the coupon code Deep Wealth, make it one word, Deep Wealth, it makes it free. And so people can really dive into that. It's a great start, especially if, as you even brought it up, a lot of people hear about that idea of adding coaching, speaking, consulting to have more impact, to generate more revenue, all those things. But the first thing people often run into is, where would I find time for that? And this course, whether you choose to go and investigate Authority Bridge more or not, this course actually helps you to do that. No matter how chaotic or how full your current life is, it'll help you to make some time for that next chapter, that thing you want to dive into. So if people go to mitchmatthews.com/time and use that coupon code Deep Wealth, one word, it'll make it free for them.
Wow, Mitch, I love that. Another F word, free. And what a great word it is.
Come on. All right.
It doesn't get any better. It's free. And the best of all is, Deep Wealth Nation, go to the show notes. It's all there for you. It's a point and click to get the free course. Mitch, thank you so much for that. That's very generous of you to reach out to Mitch, to contact him and the team. Have that conversation. I promise you, you'll come out of it a whole lot better than when you went into it. Well, that said, Mitch, congratulations. This is a wrap. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
I receive that fully. Thank you, Jeffrey.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth Podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribe, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. One business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode, the Deep Wealth Podcast. It's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.